Hey, what's up? This is going to be another video about style, but not exactly like my style study videos. I guess making a few of those so far has kind of got me thinking a lot more about style. Also, I get a lot of questions whenever I do an Instagram live or even when I'm teaching. A lot of times the question of style comes up, whether it's how can I develop my style or how do I get my style to look a little bit more like X or whatever it might be. And even just myself, I'm always confronted with this idea of style with illustrating comics. I'm working on a creator-owned comic right now, and I'm trying to, I guess, in some ways experiment with my style a little bit, trying to set this comic apart visually from some of the other comics that I've done previously. So style is, I guess, at the front of my mind lately, and I have a lot of thoughts on style. I think I've mentioned this in some of those style study videos, but um, ultimately, I feel like style in comics is it's definitely an aesthetic choice, but it's also a storytelling decision too. I feel like as an artist, you can use a specific style to tell a certain kind of story that might work better for that particular story, but not work so well for another story. So sometimes, a story maybe is a little bit more lighthearted and fun in its nature, and you can use a style to kind of, tell that story a little bit better. Maybe something a little bit more open, fluid line, cartoony style, whatever it might be, to get that story idea across. Or if something is obviously, darker, more serious, you can use a grittier kind of style. Those are like, I guess, obvious decisions, but then sometimes you can switch those up a little bit. So, for instance, maybe like a dark and very serious kind of story. What if you used a cartoony style? In a way, you're kind of like leading the reader on to believe perhaps that it might be a certain kind of story. They're expecting it to be something maybe a little bit more lighthearted. And then all of a sudden, you hit them with something more serious or scary or whatever it might be. So that's a way to kind of play with the reader's expectation of style and make the story even more effective that way. So there's a lot of things that you can do with style that goes just beyond, I guess, wanting to make something look cool or something like that. But also, what style is in comics, again, specifically, a lot of it really is a product of the constraints that you have working in comics, which are primarily deadline. It's a very deadline based profession. And in comics, especially in American comics, oftentimes the artist really doesn't have that much time to work with in order to create an issue of comics or an entire graphic novel, for instance. So, as the artist, you almost have to be clever. You're always working against the clock in some way. But you want it to look really good and you want it to be very clear and tell the story. But at the same time, there's only 24 hours in a day, and sometimes you're only getting paid so much. So you have to make it work for you. And a lot of times I look at now, I guess the more I do this, I'm looking back almost at some of the artists that inspired me and some of the styles that I really love to look at. And I guess I'm looking at it more now from like a professional point of view, and I can see where that style that I kind of gush over and have been so inspired by might have just been a really practical decision from that artist who was making the best of the amount of time that they had. So, you think about somebody like Alex Toth. He's probably one of my favorites, and he came from an era long before, digital comics or Cintiqs or anything like that. And, or I think of like Dan DiCarlo, early Archie artists like Dan DiCarlo and Harry Lucy, stuff like that, where, you know, those artists they were creating probably closer to like double the amount that a comic artist creates nowadays. and they had to do it really quickly. And the stuff looks great because the lines that they used help them sort of achieve that goal. You know, there's a lot bolder lines, thicker, brushier, expressive lines. The way they would sort of just like accentuate musculature or a cheekbone or something, whatever it is, with just literally one stroke of a brush. It communicated whatever it is that they were trying to communicate and did it in a way that was time efficient. Turns out, in the end, it just looked really cool, it had inspired generations of artists after that. But looking at it now, I feel like a lot of those choices were just really practical. You know, just like, all right, I got to draw this arm and I have to do it in like 5 minutes. And then they just kind of whipped it up. The more they did it, they kind of just like finessed that style, and it just got better and better. So, so yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't really know what I'm talking about here. I'm just sort of freestyling, pardon the pun. But if you were thinking about style, or you had any questions about your own particular style or developing it, maybe these are some alternate ways of thinking about it that's a little bit less, head on. I feel like anytime I try to approach my style very specifically, like I'm going to set out to do this kind of a style, or I'm going to set out to change my style completely, or whatever it might be, I always feel like I sort of hit a wall, because I'm approaching it too much from like an aesthetic point of view, and I'm not thinking about how that style was created in the first place. So yeah, hope this makes some sort of sense. If you were thinking about style, if you have anything to add to any of this, definitely leave it in the comments below. Or if you have any other questions, like I said, this is a little bit more of a longer form, me just sort of rambling on this topic, because sometimes on Instagram, if I get a question like this, I try to type it up in like a paragraph or less, or maybe say something like a 15-second video, and it's a little bit harder. So hopefully this was a little bit more of an elaborate take on it. But cool. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.